that we remain standing to sing to the national anthem and the East African anthem. Thank you. Thank you. We dedicate this morning to the power and control of God. We're a Christian country, so we invite God to lead us as we deliberate this morning and have the discussions that we'll have. Amen? Is that what they say? Thank you. Let's be seated. Honorable Minister, you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to launch the Tax Crimes and Proceeds Risk Assessment Report for Uganda. And this is the work of the Financial Intelligence Authority together with the Uganda Revenue Authority. At this moment, I'd like to request the Executive Director of the Financial Intelligence Authority to come and speak to us. Thank you, sir.
The Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Director, Office of the Director for Public Prosecutions, the Commissioner General, Uganda Revenue Authority, the Director, Criminal Investigations Department, the Board Chair and members of the Board of the Financial Intelligence Authority, the Chairperson of the National Anti-Money Laundering, Countering Financing of Terrorism Task Force, the Commissioners and Assistant Commissioners, Uganda Revenue Authority, the Directors and members of staff from the Financial Intelligence Authority, invited stakeholders from the civil society, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor to welcome you all to the official launch of the Uganda's Tax Crimes and Proceeds Risk Assessment Report. This report marks a significant step in strengthening our fight against tax crimes and the related money laundering and terrorism financing, both of which pose serious risks to Uganda's economic stability and financial integrity. Tax crimes generate illicit proceeds, and the evaders are constantly finding new and complex ways to conceal their gains. The collaboration between the Uganda Revenue Authority and the Financial Intelligence Authority, alongside other law enforcement agencies and other partners, is an essential and effectively tackling these challenges. The effective mobilization of domestic revenue on our minister is key to Uganda's sustainable development. However, this is being undermined by tax crimes, which not only deprives the government of critical resources, but also contributes to the rise of other financial crimes. It is important, therefore, that we fully understand the risks and vulnerabilities in our tax system so that we could decisively act to address them. I would like to acknowledge that although the risk assessment exercise was successfully conducted earlier and concluded, the launch of this report was delayed due to various administrative and logistical challenges. Despite this, we are now here ready to move forward and ensure that the findings are put into action. This report, Honourable Minister, identifies tax crimes as the second source of illicit funds for money laundering in Uganda. And from the National Risk Assessment, we know that corruption is the #1 crime which generates proceeds which are laundered in this economy. It therefore highlights serious risks, including smuggling, undervaluation of goods, false declaration, non-filing of tax returns, and these activities undermine our tax system and damage our economy. To address these issues, we must increase our capacity to investigate tax-related money laundering offenses and work closely with other agencies across our borders. The findings provided in this report will help us develop better policies and develop new enforcement strategies that we shall use to address these risks which this report has highlighted. They will also guide our risk-based approach to supervision, ensuring that resources are allocated where they are most needed in line with international standards. In addition, I would like to underscore the central role of the Financial Intelligence Authority as a strategic partner to the Uganda Revenue Authority in revenue mobilization. Honourable Minister, as we prepare for the upcoming tenfold program under the National Development Plan 4, which aims to significantly boost Uganda's domestic revenue over the next 5 years, FIA commits to continue with its central role of detecting tax crimes, tracing illicit financial flows, and providing actionable intelligence directly to support URI's effort in combating tax evasion and strengthen compliance across all sectors. FIA's expertise in identifying complex money laundering schemes and uncovering proceeds from tax crime is important in safeguarding Uganda's revenue base. Our intelligence products drawn from suspicious transactions and activity reports and our financial analysis provide valuable financial intelligence that empowers URA to pursue offenders and recover lost revenue. As we move forward, Honourable Minister, with this initiative, I want to request that URA formally recognizes the contribution made as a result of FIA's intelligence during the production of their annual reports as part of a broader narrative demonstrating how interagency cooperation is driving success in revenue mobilization. Together, we can build a stronger and more transparent financial system that benefits all Ugandans. While revenue mobilization is undoubtedly URA's core business, it is equally important for URA to build momentum in prosecuting tax crime offenders with money laundering offense added to the charge sheet. Honourable Minister, we have a problem where most government agencies, when they are charging the predicate offense, they forget to include money laundering as a separate offense. And therefore, we end up with statistics which don't reflect government effort in combating money laundering as a country. You'll find that the Directorate of Public Prosecution will have convictions for either corruption or related predicate offense, which generates crime, which generates proceeds, but there are no corresponding statistics to indicate any offenses of money laundering. So this practice should stop on our minister, and this is the only way we shall demonstrate that we are fighting money laundering crimes as well. Ensuring that those who commit tax crimes face legal consequences sends a strong message that crime does not pay. And FIA, we are supposed to support you to follow the money. So prosecution serves as a powerful deterrent, discouraging potential offenders and reinforcing public trust in the tax system. Additionally, robust prosecution will align Uganda to meet global standards on combating tax crimes and money laundering and strengthening our reputation in the international financial community. Holding offenders accountable also ensures that Uganda remains compliant with the international frameworks such as the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, safeguarding our financial system and economy from exploitation. Prosecution, therefore, is not just about recovering lost revenue, it is also about upholding justice and maintaining the integrity of our tax system and protecting Uganda's long-term development goals. I would like to extend my appreciation to the World Bank Group for the technical support and to all the stakeholders involved in making this assessment a reality. I also wish to extend our deepest gratitude to UNODC, Uganda Country Office, for supporting this event, and the head of the UNODC Uganda office is around. We appreciate the support you continue providing FIA. This launch is not just a formality, it is a call to action for all the stakeholders in the fight against tax crimes and associated money laundering and terrorism financing. We must strengthen our cooperation, improve enforcement, and ensure that tax crimes are met with firm and swift justice. Our collective effort will help safeguard Uganda's financial system and ensure a fair and transparent tax environment for all. At this juncture, I want to thank you all and look forward to a productive and meaningful discussion during this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bwana Idi, for those welcome remarks. May I invite the head of office, UNODC, to come and speak to us. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Commissioner General of the Uganda Revenue Authority, the Executive Director of the Financial Intelligence Authority, and your staff, the Board and Chairperson of the Financial Intelligence Authority and your membership, representatives of the Bank of Uganda, the Uganda Bankers Association, and the private sector, representatives from institutions that partner with the FIA. I also acknowledge the Office of the DPP, civil society, development partners, my colleagues from UNODC, may I simply say, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to join you today as we launch Uganda's Tax Crimes and Proceeds Risk Assessment Report. This event is a testament to the remarkable efforts being made to secure Uganda's financial systems, and it is an important step forward in our joint commitment to combat tax crimes and reduce the risk posed by money laundering and illicit financial flows. UNODC is proudly associated. Honorable Minister, tax crimes represent a critical challenge to Uganda's economic stability and development aspirations. Despite significant progress in improving tax revenue collection, tax crimes such as evasion, fraud, and other illegal financial practices continue to undermine the country's fiscal health. These activities deplete resources, depriving the government of the much-needed revenue that could otherwise be invested in infrastructure, healthcare, and education, the very foundations of sustainable development. The consequences are felt throughout the economy, and the already highlighted fiscal deficit, which recently grew from 7% to 9% of GDP, which is a stark reminder of the importance of tackling tax crimes head-on. The stakes are high. If left unchecked, tax crimes fuel inequality, weaken public trust in governance, and perpetuate economic instability. Addressing these challenges, Honorable Minister, is not just a matter of strengthening tax enforcement, it is central to safeguarding Uganda's broader development goals. It's important to highlight that tax crimes are closely linked to the broader issue of illicit financial flows. Illicit financial flows encompass a range of financial movements that are illegal in nature, including tax evasion, trade mispricing, and the laundering of proceeds from illegal activities. These actions erode the tax base and make it increasingly difficult for the government to meet its revenue targets, which are crucial for funding essential services. One of the clearest examples of the success of addressing this issue comes from the Uganda Revenue Authority, who in 2020 embarked on a program with the World Bank entitled Strengthening the Capacity to Investigate Tax Crimes. The techniques learned enabled the formed anti-money laundering unit consisting of Uganda National Roads Authority, FIA, and the Directorate of Immigration and Passport Control to gather actionable intelligence to investigate and prosecute those involved in money laundering and tax crimes. This is an example of how effectively collaborating across sectors and using a whole-of-government approach can significantly reduce the damage caused by illicit financial flows and tax crimes. The ability of tax investigators to collaborate with anti-money laundering authorities and access crucial information on illicit financial activities has proven instrumental in recovering assets and holding offenders accountable. This whole-of-government approach, promoted by international organizations like UNODC and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Financial Action Task Force, demonstrates the effectiveness of combining tax and money laundering investigations to combat illicit financial flows. Now, our involvement, Honorable Minister, stems from our mandate, which strives to make the world safer from drugs, organized crime, corruption, and terrorism by working closely with member states to promote justice and the rule of law. As the custodian of key international legal frameworks, including the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and its 3 protocols on trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants and trafficking in firearms, UNODC is also the custodian of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. We also lead on the 3 drug conventions that look at narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and the illicit trafficking of both. Honorable Mr., UNODC is also responsible for international standards on crime prevention and criminal justice. This brings us in having long-standing experience and expertise in providing normative and technical assistance in these areas. In the Eastern African region, Honorable Minister, UNODC's capacity building initiatives are guided by our new strategic vision for Eastern Africa for 2024 to 2030. It provides the necessary framework to address the daily challenges facing the region. The vision informs our policy and interventions in key areas. One is on drug control, organized crime, terrorism and violent extremism, cybercrime, resources and livelihoods, corruption, and criminal justice. As UNODC, we have long recognized the need to support countries like Uganda in their efforts to combat financial crimes. Through our global program against money laundering, proceeds of crime, and the financing of terrorism, we work closely with governments to provide technical assistance, capacity building, and training to ensure national financial institutions are equipped to meet international standards. In Uganda, we are implementing a 5-year program on strengthening crime prevention and criminal justice, which plays an integral role in these efforts. The overall objective of our country program is to contribute to the strengthening of rule of law through crime prevention and the promotion of fair, effective, and humane accountable criminal justice. The fifth objective of our program, Honorable Minister, focuses on strengthening mechanisms for the systematic collection and analysis of data on organized crime, including countering illicit financial flows and money laundering. By building capacity in these areas, Uganda is better positioned to detect, intercept, and recover illicit financial flows. We are extremely grateful to the government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for the generous financial support that they've provided to UNODC to undertake this enormous program in the country. In addition, I would like to highlight the custodial role that UNODC shares with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in monitoring progress towards Sustainable Development Goal and the related indicators, which aims to reduce illicit financial flows, combat organized crime, and recover and return stolen assets by 2030. This is at the heart of our mandate, and today's event aligns directly with the global community's efforts to promote peace, justice, and strong institutions as part of the 2030 agenda. Target 16.4 specifically calls for the reduction of illicit financial flows, which includes addressing tax crimes and the associated proceeds of crime, thereby ensuring that all countries, including Uganda, can build sustainable and resilient communities. As we discuss the importance of addressing tax crimes and the illicit financial flows today, it is important to frame these efforts within the broader context of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. The successful reduction of tax crimes is not just domestic imperative, it is part of Uganda's contribution to achieving global security and prosperity. And through the 2030 agenda, it is important that illicit financial flows are at the center of this work. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take the opportunity to emphasize the importance of collaboration in this fight, the interconnectedness of financial systems, and the cross-border nature of tax crimes and illicit financial flows make it impossible for any one institution to address these challenges in isolation. Today's launch is a reflection of the collaborative spirit that must define our approach. The Uganda Revenue Authority, the Financial Intelligence Authority, civil society, the private sector, and our international partners all play a vital role in ensuring the recommendations of this report. By working together, we can develop a more resilient financial system that is capable of protecting itself from illicit financial flows. In conclusion, allow me to once again thank the esteemed partners and our partnership with the Financial Intelligence Authority, the Uganda Revenue Authority, and all participating institutions, and we congratulate you for your hard work and commitment in this initiative. As UNODC, we remain fully committed to supporting the government of Uganda in its fight against financial crimes and to enhancing the capacity of the country's criminal justice system. Together, we can make Uganda's economy safer, stronger, and more secure. Thank you for listening to me, and we wish you a productive deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That round of applause was not as encouraging, so can we do it again? Thank you very much. For my colleagues in the media, especially, the person who's just spoken to us is called Sharon Nyambe. That's her name, correct? Yes. Thank you very much. She's the head of office, UNODC. And the person who spoke to us before, the executive director at the Financial Intelligence Authority. Sorry, I need to give you his name so that we don't make mistakes. Sometimes we do. Samuel Were Wandera, that's his name. That's for my colleagues in the media, so that we don't get some of those things wrong. Thank you. May I now invite the Commissioner General of the Uganda Revenue Authority. He will be represented by Catherine Chokunda Donovan. Catherine, please. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Sasi, and all the executive directors, FIA, who we recognize indeed as URA, directors of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and all stakeholders here involved, including representatives from the World Bank, UNDPO, our fellow colleagues from URA, the UPF CID, Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration who are involved, members of the Bankers Association, the non-profit organizations and civil society here represented. Recognize you, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to welcome you to the launch of the Tax Crimes and Proceeds Assessment Report 2024. This is a groundbreaking report, and it marks a significant step forward for Uganda, the result of collaborative efforts among various stakeholders from the public sector, private sector, and civil society. Together, we've gathered insights from the Ministry of Finance, Uganda Revenue Authority, and the Financial Intelligence Authority, among others. Covering the years 2017 to 2022, this assessment utilized the Domestic Tax Evasion Risk Assessment tool developed by the World Bank. Through this rigorous analysis, we've uncovered both the strengths of our tax regime and the vulnerabilities that persist. While we've established a strong legal framework, operational challenges remain, particularly in linking tax crimes to money laundering. The findings of this assessment provide a crucial foundation for our ongoing efforts to combat these issues. The analysis shows that prosecutions for tax crimes have risen, yet our tax to GDP ratio has stagnated to about 13%. This calls for urgent, targeted actions to combat tax crimes and money laundering. Furthermore, tax crimes have been identified as the second highest proceeds-generating offenses for money laundering, emphasizing the need for vigilance in our efforts. On a global aspect, as Uganda is looking to advance and develop, it is evident that we are getting into critical areas like petroleum and gold, which encourage investors in our economy. However, this comes with significant financial risk at a global level for money laundering. As Commissioner for the Legal Department, URA, I have recognized that indeed There are significant risks with especially offshore banking facilities and key areas which we may perhaps not be very alive to. So this is a very timely assessment for how we can actually take steps to be alive to the key issues that can strengthen our regime in terms of how many matters we deal with from a money laundering perspective, so that there is a deterrence to those who may take advantage of our economy as a growing economy. We face significant threats, especially with value-added tax, corporate income tax, and payee tax. These challenges are exacerbated by trade-based money laundering and porous borders, the sophistication of companies that are of a global nature, whilst we are a growing economy. These trends of money laundering have been significant in increasing the gaps in our deficit as we aim to increase our economic growth and hit our revenue targets to grow the GDP. Gaps in enforcement and compliance are hindering our progress, while false declarations undermine our revenue collection. Uganda Revenue takes cognizance of these issues. Whilst facing these obstacles, we remain steadfast in our commitment to fight tax transparency and the fight against crimes. This report further underscores how tackling tax crimes can directly reduce money laundering, ultimately making Uganda more attractive to the investors. As you are all aware, stakeholders involved in this assessment, one of the key things is Uganda is now on the grey list, and what we want to do as we progress is to make sure that we do not end up in the wrong places. So as URA, we are committed to fostering an economy that actually fights this illicit trade, and we are committed to broadening our tax base as we increase our revenue and foster a more equitable economy. As we stand at this pivotal moment, I urge all stakeholders to embrace the recommendations from this report. Let us enhance our enforcement mechanisms, strengthen our investigative capacity, and cultivate a compliance culture among all the taxpayers. Uganda Revenue Authority recognizes the need for increased resources to investigate tax crimes alongside money laundering, in line with the Anti-Money Laundering Act. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone involved in this assessment. I'm speaking on behalf of the Commissioner General, Mr. John Musinguzi, who is not able to be present. Musinguzi. Well, the Honorable Minister is coming from our parent company. He's not able to be with us, but this is something that he's passionate about, and as you can tell, he did indeed give the forward remarks. So I speak on his behalf. Together, URA and all the various stakeholders herein represented, we can make a move with determination and resolve to create a transparent, equitable, and effective tax system for all Ugandans for our economic development. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Catherine heads legal at the Uganda Revenue Authority, and she was speaking on behalf of the Executive Director. Full name, Catherine Chokunda Donovan. That's for the benefit of my colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, can you allow me to invite a presentation on the MLTF Tax Crimes and Proceeds Sectoral Risk Assessment. And I'd like to invite Edward to come and make that presentation. Yes? We'll have to make a quick switch on one or two things. And at this moment, have the minister speak to us. and then we'll proceed after the minister's speech.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. The head of office at UNODC Uganda, I'm happy to meet you, Mrs. Sharon. The chairman board of the Financial Intelligence Authority and your board members, executive director, Sam Wandera, and your management team, the representative of URA Commissioner General, Catherine, and the team from URA, representative of DPP, Josephine Namatovu. We have the representative of PSST, Commissioner Moses Ogwapus from Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. I can see my friend Wilbrod from Uganda Bankers Association. I have not seen Julius Mukunda this time around. Who is representing him? Civil Society, Budget Advocacy Group. Someone there. Those are our very, very strong partners. Do you have Registration Services Bureau? URSB. They were invited, they are supposed to be part of this. Titus, I recognize you in your special capacity. We started this struggle of anti-money laundering with Titus. He's the one who helped me on the drafting of the legislation, which gave birth to Financial Intelligence Authority. I recognize him in that regard. Distinguished guests in your respective capacities, ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly honored to officiate at this launch of the Money Laundering Stroke Terrorism Financing Risk Assessment on Tax Crimes and Proceeds Report of 2024. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all members present and wish to point out that your presence is of good significant importance as it highlights deliberate efforts in the fight against money laundering, terrorism financing, and associated tax crimes in Uganda. Several studies have shown that tax crimes and tax evasion and money laundering is if widespread, are costly to the economy. It is important to note that tax crimes and money laundering are not only harmful to the government and society, but also law-abiding citizens are at a disadvantage. These crimes deter growth of tax revenues and are used to finance essential expenditure programs by governments such as education, security, health, and public infrastructure development, among others. By evading taxes, individuals and corporations deprive the government of these necessary resources to perform the civic duty of providing services to our citizens. It is important to recognize that there is an overlap between tax crimes and money laundering. Both are often concurrently committed, and both crimes often rely upon similar techniques, such as use of shell companies and fraudulent business records and accounting journal entries, among others. In the year 2012, the Financial Action Task Force added tax evasion to their official index of offenses to money laundering. Uganda adopted a similar approach that placed tax evasion in the same tier as arms trafficking, drug trafficking, corruption, and other serious offenses whose proceeds are commonly laundered by criminals, and this increased the tools which authorities could use to combat tax crime. The money laundering stroke terrorism financing risk assessment on tax crimes and proceeds stems from the Money Laundering National Risk Assessment 2023, which established that crimes were the second highest proceeds generating predicate offense, as evidenced by crime data from financial year 2016, 2017 to financial year 2019-20. It was imperative that sectoral money laundering risk assessment is conducted on tax crimes and proceeds to have an in-depth understanding of the money laundering and terrorism financing risks and appropriate mitigation measures. The data and information used for completing the money laundering risk assessment tool for tax crimes and proceeds, as well as findings, interpretation, and judgments, were all inputs of the authorities of the Republic of Uganda. The assessment team analyzed Uganda's tax threats, vulnerabilities, and mitigation measures as indicated below. Number one, the threat analysis indicated that at domestic level, the tax crime threat is high, largely driven by trade-based money laundering schemes. Number two, tax crimes vulnerability was rated as medium, with the major drivers of the rating being weaknesses in the tax enforcement by the tax authority and administration of tax evasion penalties to enhance compliance and increased responsiveness. Number three, the assessment established that a number of money laundering investigations, prosecutions, and convictions associated with tax crimes remained low. There is urgent need to pursue money laundering investigations alongside tax crime investigations, to trace related proceeds, enforce recoveries, and strengthen tax enforcement actions. Combating tax crimes and money laundering is an important tool for boosting revenue collection and attracting foreign direct investments to Uganda. I strongly encourage each one of you to internalize this report, as this would go a long way in curbing tax crimes and money laundering. Similarly, I also encourage all agencies responsible for implementing the respective measures in the action plan of the report to do so within the agreed timelines. Let me remind you that tax crime and money laundering techniques are changing as criminals employ new technology tools, misuse of virtual assets, and cross-border offenses are becoming more widespread. As cases become more complex, setting up joint task forces and intelligence sharing groups, both in the domestic and international arena, becomes increasingly important. It is also critical that Uganda stays up to date with technological developments that are leading to the emergence of new risks, including the increase in cyber crimes, misuse of cryptocurrencies, and a new breed of sophisticated professional enablers that create opaque structures and move money increasingly in real time. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development remains committed to ensuring that the anti-money laundering regime in Uganda is solid and complies with regional and international standards. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the officers from Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, led by Commissioner Moses Ogwapus, who is here representing the PSST, the Financial Intelligence Authority staff, led by Mr. Samuel Wandera Were, and Uganda Revenue Authority, here represented by Catherine, and Uganda Registration Services Bureau, Uganda Bankers Association, represented by Wilbrod, and the non-government organizations sector, represented by the Civil Society Advocacy Group, for the devotion exhibited in finalizing this risk assessment. When we thank people, you clap. I also extend my gratitude to the World Bank Group for providing the tool used in this exercise. I also want to thank the UN ODC. Madam Sharon, you gave a good speech. I'm going to ask Commissioner Ogwapus to get me a copy of your speech. I want to find time and read it again, because you emphasized a number of issues, especially on the financial frauds, which I think are valuable to our work as we continue the struggle to end all the gaps in the anti-money laundering struggle. So your speech is very valuable. We'll pick some points from it. Thank you very much. I wish to once again thank the Financial Intelligence Authority and Uganda Revenue Authority for spearheading the money laundering, terrorism financing risk assessment on the tax crimes and the proceeds and the dissemination of this report. And I'm happy to hear that Sam Wandera is facilitating revenue collection. Because if you heard from Catherine's statement, she said our tax to GDP ratio is at 13%. I have been in politics for now close to 14 years. I joined Parliament in 2011. The tax to GDP ratio then was about 12.8%. And 2 years or so later, it came to 13%. We have stagnated there for all these years. Ogwapus knows very well. So I want to believe that Wandera's effort will facilitate us to move from the 13% to 16 and eventually to 18%, which we are desirous to achieve because, as we well know, the sources of financing of our budget continue to decline. And as a result of that, all our eyes are on our internally generated resources, which come from the taxes. So therefore, I'm happy to hear that Sam Wandera is complementing this effort, and all of you here should complement the efforts of URA and the government to ensure that we move from this stagnation. With these remarks, I now do what? Launch.
Honorable Minister, we request you to launch.
What do I do next?
Give us just a minute.
Because I've finished speaking.
Thank you. We will move this up there in a moment and you help us do the launch.
Okay.
We also request you to take a group photo with a few people here, and a group photo after that, and we'll be done. So can we have this move to the platform? Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's move it up. Let's move off these tables. Move this. Faster. You could do this faster. Move this table. This table. Bernard, help us drop that down. Thank you. So the minister will help us do the launch of this. Can we request the ED, the chairman, Uganda Revenue Authority, UNODC, some members of the board. Sorry, guys. I'm getting into your pictures. We request as many of us here as possible to sign on that board for the launch. Honorable Minister, I'll bring you the microphone to announce the launch. So the minister will unveil the report. FIA, if we have some copies, let every member here have a copy, if it's possible. And then yes, the World Bank group is also here, Mr. Minister. Get closer. I'll ask you to pause and take a photo with the report in the background.
The Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Tax Crimes and Proceeds Risk Assessment Report for Uganda is hereby launched.
Okay, you stand and take a photo. I don't see Uganda Revenue Authority hiding in the back there. Catherine, could you stand on the other side maybe? Okay. Let's get closer. World Bank Group, please come closer. Yes. The professionals can help us if that is okay. Covered it. Honorable Minister, the problem is that you're tall, so. You're very tall, so. The professionals can advise us. Can we get a good photo there? Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We request, pardon? Yes, that you shake hands with the people there, with the chairman, with UNODC, with Uganda Revenue Authority, with the World Bank Group. Yes. ODPP, where is ODPP? Yes, ODPP. Closer. I believe, gentlemen, that those are enough for now. Mr. Minister will request for another group photo, but we'll take that outside. Pardon? Yes. Now, Mr. Chairman, if you could sign your report. Just taking a few more minutes of your time, sir. I know you have to run to Parliament. Yes, but we'll release you in a minute. UNODC, put a signature there. Uganda Revenue Authority, put a signature. World Bank Group, ODPP, put a signature. The rest of us, gentlemen and ladies, I request that we sign after the minister has left. FIA, yes, FIA signed. FIA, that's your report, so. For the benefit of my colleagues in the media, the name of the minister is Henry Arganyira Musasizi. He represents the people of Rwanda West constituency in the 11th Parliament. I'll give the names of the other people who spoke. So could we, gentlemen, accompany the minister just outside of the hotel? We'll take a group photo with all of us and then come back into the hall. Can we? Shall we? Yes, let's follow the minister. The photographers, please race ahead of us. We'll take a group photo just outside, and then we'll all come back here. We'll have a panel, a presentation of the report, and a panel discussion after that. And we'll end our morning's engagements. So we accompany the minister, take a group photo, all of us, and then we'll come back here. Thank you. Those of us who can, please join the group photo. Members of the board, the different collaborative partners.
has always been a friend of mine. Leaving my life in your hands. People say I'm crazy, yeah, that I am blind. Risking it all at a glance. And how you got me blind is still a mystery. I can't get you out of my head. Don't care what is written in your history, as long as you're here with me. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you did, as long as you love me. Who you are, where you're from, don't care what you did, as long as you love me. Every little thing that you have said and done feels like it's deep within me. Yeah. It doesn't really matter if you're on the run. It seems like we're meant to be. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you did, as long as you love me. Who you are, where you're from, don't care what you did, as long as you love me. As long as you love me. I've tried to hide it so that no one knows, but I guess it shows when you look into my eyes. What you did and where you're coming from, I don't care, as long as you love me, baby. Oh, as long as you love me. Oh, I don't care who you are, where you're from, I don't care what you did, I don't care, as long as you love me. Who you are, I don't care where you're from, what you did, as long as you love me. Who you are, where you're from, I don't care what you did, as long as you love me. Who you are, where you're from, what you did, as long as you love me. Who you are, as long as you love me. What you did, as long as you love me. One, two, three, four. Yeah. You are my fire, the one desire, believe when I say I want.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you come back, before we settle in, you could come put your signature. You could come put your signature on this report launch. Eh? Yes, you could come and sign. Please. Meantime, we could have a few more people sign up on this. Madam Agnes, do you know what that is called? I don't know what it is called. This one, I don't know what it is called. I'm looking for the right name for it. Gentlemen, could you please put a signature to this? We'll appreciate, yes. We'll appreciate a few more signatures on here. We're moving it down here. We'll move it back down here, and all of us can come and sign at our convenience. The board, okay. If someone knows the right name to give to what we are signing on, please share it with me. But we'll encourage you to keep coming and signing. It will remain here until the end of the function. Please come and put your signature to confirm that you participated in this launch, that you're here. In a few moments, I'll invite back Edward. Edward, sorry for the disruption there. We had to make the adjustment to accommodate the minister's early departure. But Edward, if you could get closer and be ready with the presentation, and then after that we'll have a panel discussion and a short plenary, and we'll be done for the morning. Yes, I believe we are still in fairly good time to end at the planned time. Breakfast is still available. Please pick some breakfast. Pick a cup of coffee or tea. In the meantime, pick a cup of tea or coffee and some breakfast if you can. Edward, are you ready? Yes, if you are, please come and take up the podium. As Edward makes his way here, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll listen to the earlier speakers from the ED, from Uganda Revenue Authority, and the minister's remarks. Those will partly form our panel discussion. Some of the remarks will form a bit of the content for our panel discussion and the expounding on the report. There's one area, the last I had, was that Uganda had actually moved off the gray list. We have? As of February, Uganda is off the gray list. Thank you very much. So the journey and the struggle is to make sure that Uganda doesn't slip back onto the gray list. And this report launch is part of those efforts. The minister has just thrown FIA curveball together with URA to make sure that the revenue share to GDP, the ratio, grows to 18% finally. Yeah? Stagnation, he said it's been there, we've been there since 2014, we've been at 13%. But we've inched up a little bit, huh? About to reach 14. The revenue collector has told us, if you round up, we're at 14. That's very good. Was someone saying that we're borrowing money to pay our taxes? And I had the minister protesting and saying, no, that's not true. We have the money to pay, borrow money to pay salaries. They said that we're not doing. Okay. So, Edward, as you come to speak to us, I hope most of us are back. Are we? I think so. We have quorum, so you can come and speak to us. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. All protocols observed. In the absence of the Honorable Minister, distinguished guests invited, board members and chair of the board for FIA, senior colleagues within FIA and URA, and all invited participants. Today, as they have just launched the report for the Tax Crimes and Proceeds, Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Risk Assessment report for 2024, we wanted to share some highlights of the findings as well as the recommendations within the report. I believe many of you have already received this report from where you are seated, and also some executive summaries have also been distributed. For the executive summaries, we've been able to also attach the action plan, which is quite important in terms of implementation after today. So we are going to go through the objectives of the risk assessment, the methodology that was relied on, the findings from the threat analysis, the money laundering threat analysis, the methods of tax evasion that were identified, the ML vulnerability of tax crimes and proceeds that was also assessed. Then we shall have an overall picture of the risk that Uganda faces, and then we shall conclude with recommendations. This risk assessment was conducted, first of all, as an obligation to identify, assess, and understand risks. As many of you might be aware, we follow the Financial Action Task Force Recommendation 1, which requires jurisdictions, including Uganda, to conduct risk assessments to be able to identify and understand the risks that are posed out of the tax crimes and proceeds in order for us to put in place mitigation measures that are commensurate with the identified risks. And also, it allows us to execute our resources in a more effective way through a risk-based approach, and also to strengthen the ability through the different stakeholders, especially the leading agency, the Uganda Revenue Authority, in detecting and recovering proceeds generated from tax crimes. And lastly, as all this through parallel financial investigations, the risk assessment will assist us in the effective asset recovery and contributing to the disruption of financial crime networks. The working group that put together this study are comprised of the members of the Uganda Revenue Authority. We had the chairperson from this team, and also 5 other members from the Uganda Revenue Authority. Mr. Nicholas Muganga, I don't know, I saw him earlier. He was the chairperson of the group. Let's give him a round of applause. And we also had the Financial Intelligence Authority as the note takers and the secretariat of the working group. So all the data that was being collected during the risk assessment, all the findings that you must back up while the study is ongoing, were all being kept by the secretariat, and we have them in safe custody. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development had members who contributed to this study, especially at the strategic level during the report writing from the National AML-CFT Task Force, with leadership from the chairperson of the National AML-CFT Task Force. We also had membership from the CID and the Uganda Police Force, the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control, Uganda Bankers Association representing the private sector, as well as Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group that represented the non-profit organization sector. The objectives of this study covered 4 areas. One was to assess the magnitude of the tax crime proceeds, to analyze the scale of tax crimes by revenue source, to examine the nature of tax crimes, and also to evaluate the nature of money laundering arising out of tax crimes. For this last one, of course, as you understand the scale and nature of money laundering cases, we had to look at how they are connected to both the known and the perceived tax crime that is determined on whether the proceeds that are generated out of that tax crime are generated whether domestically or abroad. The methodology that was relied on, again, comes from the guidance of the World Bank through a self-assessment tool. World over, we have 3 different types of risk assessments. We have the self-assessment tool, which is pioneered by the World Bank, and this cuts across all the different MLTF risk assessments, including the National Risk Assessment, which we will be embarking on next year. Secondly, there is the tool for the International Monetary Fund, and this one usually is not self-assessment. It is conducted by the team of the IMF, and you provide them with the necessary data, but they conduct the assessment themselves. The third type of the risk assessment is the one that different countries develop, and using different intermediate variables, input variables, and different parameters to arrive at their qualitative and quantitative measurements, they can be able to use their own developed risk assessment. So as we build capacity in Uganda, we used the self-assessment tool of the World Bank. It is known as the Diamond tool, which we will be explaining in detail. And the scope of this study looked at data from 2017 up to 2021, financial year 2020-2021. The data sources covered both quantitative, which are the statistics from URA, government MDAs, international sources, among others, as well as qualitative data, looking at different surveys, interviews, and focus groups, as well as engaging some experts in the space of tax crimes. The tool we mentioned earlier is known as the Development Implementation and Monitoring Directives Domestic Tax Evasion Tool. It was developed by World Bank in 2022 and piloted here in Uganda. Members, I request that we clap for this, as Uganda is the first country to conclude a tax crime and money laundering and risk assessment, tax crime and proceeds risk assessment through this tool. And we know that many other jurisdictions world over, because about 90% of world jurisdictions use the World Bank self-assessment tools. So we know that at this point they are all going to be looking to Uganda and going through our report, trying to understand how it was done, and where possible we shall be able to now offer capacity to other countries in this area. The tool also considered the important role of anti-tax evasion mechanisms, and these we shall go in detail about them. The ML threat analysis within the tax crimes tool established, as they earlier highlighted, it was rated high, with key offenses including smuggling, non-filing, underfiling, falsehoods, and fraudulent schemes. And the criteria of assessing the money laundering threat arising out of tax crimes and proceeds covered 4 key areas. The first being the scale. Here we looked at determining the order of magnitude of the known tax crime threat based on the enforcement data. This is the data which we picked from URA. Then we looked at relative and perceived incidents and proceeds. This basically allowed the working group to determine the relative scale of tax proceeds by tax revenue source and the perceived incidents and proceeds of tax crime. Perceived incidence was the frequency within which a tax crime is likely to happen in different environments. Then the other area that was covered was the nature of the tax crimes. And in this area, we looked at the nature that based on the past cases, including how they have evolved over time. That means that the data of 2017 was compared against the data of 2021, and a trend analysis was conducted to see if there are any evolving methods in that space. Lastly was the scale and nature of money laundering and proceeds of tax crimes. Looking at the magnitude of tax crime threat, there are quite a number of efforts that the Uganda Revenue Authority has undertaken in this space. And here we are mostly looking at the number of tax crime cases that were detected, the criminal investigations that were conducted within that space, and the prosecutions as well as convictions that were derived within that period of 2017 up to 2021. And we see that a high number of over 600 billion Uganda shillings was confiscated as proceeds arising out of tax crimes, with 8 billion of that linked to mutual legal assistance requests, and also 9 outgoing mutual legal assistance requests that were sent out. It is important, members, that we need to note that every effort Uganda takes, especially in the area of mutual legal assistance, is counted as a win for the country, because we must demonstrate that we are not only trying to combat these tax crimes within the borders of Uganda, but we are collaborating with international agencies as we do it. And with this, we were able to assess the relative and perceived threat, which is the tax crimes being ranked second highest after corruption, and that out of the assessment, VAT fraud was found to be the most prevalent crime through false declarations, fictitious invoices, facilitated as a result of the informal cash economy. And also the leading tax crimes by magnitude after VAT was the corporate income tax, the payee tax, which is in the tool was known as the payroll tax, as well as the personal income tax. The methods of tax evasion through the assessment findings indicated quite a number of areas. The first being over and under invoicing, which is mostly rotating around misrepresenting the transaction values on the invoices to illegally transfer value across borders. Over invoicing can be used to transfer proceeds, for example, out of Uganda, while appearing to be honest business dealings. And we see falsification of documents is mostly used to manipulate business revenue, country of origin, as well as profits to lower the tax liability by either the individual or the entity. There are quite a number of methods falsely describing goods and services. This is usually the misrepresentation either of the quality or the type of goods or services in order to manipulate the transaction value. And of course, usually this can come as an example of importing luxury vehicles, and somehow they are described as second-hand vehicles in order to reduce the import duties. We also looked at the misclassification of goods. Each of these methods was assessed in detail, and there are quite a number of findings that are well detailed in the report. The assessment of the tax vulnerability. Remember, in order for the country to assess risk, we must look at both the money laundering threat as well as the money laundering vulnerability. Now, in the area of money laundering vulnerability, we looked at what are the areas where Uganda is likely to face challenges or weaknesses when it comes to tax crimes. And here we looked at 131 benchmark indicators, 85 non-benchmark indicators, 9 areas, 3 functional dimensions, and 18 cross-functional dimensions. But just to give you a quick picture, on the 3 functional dimensions, here we looked at the legal function, which refers to the feature of Uganda's legal framework that, for example, if unless it is addressed, it may end up enabling tax evasion. It also includes, for example, legal loopholes and gaps in the controls that we already have in place, or maybe legal loopholes in enforcement or during core tax obligations, and also in the tax penalty framework. So the first aspect was the legal function. The second aspect was the institutional function, which mostly looked at the institutional frameworks of those who are put in place to combat tax crimes. And here we are mostly focused on the weaknesses within these organizations in terms of administration that may affect its capacity to control or monitor or audit or investigate and detect and sanction tax evasion practices. So beyond this, you'd be looking at capacity building within that specific institution. Have they built capacity to be able to combat tax crimes? And if there is no capacity building, then that means the institution in itself has limited capacity in order to combat these tax crimes, which eventually makes the country vulnerable to being used for money laundering, rising out of the proceeds of tax evasion. Then the last function within these three functional dimensions was the operational function, which mostly looks at the practices that, unless if they are addressed, may enable tax evasion to happen. And this focuses on the operational gaps within tax controls, risk assessments, and monitoring practices, including the use of technology in order to be able to detect tax crimes. Again, this methodology is well explained within the main report. The assessment of the tax vulnerability, among others, answered these key questions, which are highlighted on the screen. Which taxes are undermined by the identified vulnerabilities? Remember, we were looking at 5 different types of taxes. And also, which taxpayer segment and tax-based system are undermined by the identified vulnerabilities? Again, we indicated the different taxpayer segments. And lastly, which processes and capabilities are undermined by the identified vulnerabilities. So there we go through the different processes. And the tool allows for granular data to be entered in each of these processes and capabilities. For example, if you're looking at intelligence and risk assessment, you will have to go in detail within the processes. How are those processes being done within the institutions right now? And also, what are the capabilities within those processes? Starting with whether standard operating procedures are in place, whether the legal framework allows for those processes to actually happen, among others. So the indicators of the tax vulnerability are highlighted there. And as you see, the heat map shows a section of red, a section of orange, a section of yellow, and a section of green. Here, we are moving from 0, where red starts, moving towards 100. It means whatever is in red, we are not doing well as a country. And as we move towards green, we begin to improve in those areas. And you can see that there are quite a number of areas where we are doing well and areas where we need to improve. For example, you can see the area of enforcement and penalties. We need to improve. We were rated at 69 point a few aggregates percentage. And in the area of multinational corporations and enterprises, we are also trying to improve. So this is the heat map showing relative and perceived tax crimes threat for Uganda. So as we see in this heat map, the working group analyzed the enforcement data and international cooperation data within the dedicated tool where the enforcement data is entered. There is a way the tool wanted this data to be entered, and the way we had extracted the data, we had to sit and break it down in granular form because the tool was somehow designed differently from the way the data is being collected on within our systems, the URS systems, CID systems, FIA, and others. So we see within this enforcement data, we were able to assess the known threat, the incidence and proceeds of tax crimes for the main tax revenue streams based on the review of the number of cases that have been assessed, confiscated tax crime proceeds. Due to the inherent hidden nature of criminal behavior and enforcement and international cooperation data would not reflect the full scope of this criminal behavior, but only in the known. There is the section of perceived data and known data. So within the known cases and proceeds, in order to achieve understanding of the unknown threat, this step also contains an examination of the perceptions or or more subjective information such as expert opinions and open source information, as well as interviews from key stakeholders. So it's important here that we note that VAT or the goods and service tax within the perceived column was the highest, was the leading tax crime category in terms of the magnitude, followed by the payroll tax, the corporate income tax, and the personal income tax, respectively. The challenges were there. Using a new tool, this is a tool that Uganda was using for the first time, and also we did not have any other jurisdiction to benchmark the tool on, so we were the actual benchmark. Right now we are the standard, and therefore we had a lot of capacity building that was done. So there were delays because capacity was being built in the working group, but also the tool itself was being re-engineered to fit within the context of the developing economies, for example, Uganda. So the tool was disseminated to Uganda, but there was feedback that was within Uganda and World Bank in order to keep on improving the tool, to speak to the data that we have. So that back and forth using of the new tool, but I believe that in the next risk assessment, we are more than ready, and capacity has now been built in order to have a seamless risk assessment. Then, of course, the challenge of inadequate data, as it was needed in granular form within the tool, was also a challenge to the working group. But we were able to overcome this through spending more time breaking it down as it is needed within the working tool, and without compromising on the data integrity. And also some sections within there we relied on surveys and expert opinions. Then COVID-19 came in, because this study was started within the COVID period. So there were challenges of interaction, members meeting. There were sections of the economy that were under lockdown, but we were able to use virtual means and through virtual meetings and electronic means to share data. We also had the logistical and other administrative challenges, as were explained earlier by the executive director. The recommendations arising out of this report, we are really passionate about these recommendations, and with our sister agency, Uganda Revenue Authority, we hope that we can be able to implement some of them. And the first one will most likely go to Ministry of Justice, really to assist us with a non-conviction-based asset forfeiture law. I know ODPP, the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions, is taking some steps in this direction, and we really look forward to empowering URA to be able to confiscate money laundering proceeds from tax crimes without having to wait for a conviction, because right now we have to wait for a conviction in order to go after the proceeds of crime. And also, we have a very strong recommendation of pursuing money laundering investigations alongside tax crimes. The Uganda Revenue Authority has really done well. Let's first clap for them on the space of tax crimes. They've really done so well. When you look at the conviction rate, it's really high. The numbers are really high. We really want to thank them. Now we are asking them to take it a step higher and begin to include those money laundering investigations within the area of tax crimes. Remember, for every tax liability that you tell the taxpayer, please refund this money, that we will show you how that can actually be a proceed of crime. And instead of just taking that limited tax liability of, let's say you've done the reassessment and you want to slap a 1.3 billion tax on this person, and they are willing to pay back the 1.3 billion because you have caught them. But if you went on into prosecution, you'll be able to actually cover almost 10-year period, because now you'll be able to prove that all these years, what they have been doing was actually linked to proceeds of crime. The different assets that they were able to grow, that they can't explain under normal circumstances, can all be attached. So instead of going for 1.3 billion, you end up going for a whooping 100 billion. I know it will take time, but I want us to begin having those discussions, as we shall see in the panel discussion with the executive director. Capacity building, We request that training staff on financial investigations and money laundering case prosecutions begin to happen. And I'm happy to report that tomorrow, in this same venue, there is a training, capacity building training between FIA, ODPP, and Uganda Revenue Authority, and they are going to be discussing how to improve on money laundering investigations and as well as prosecutions. So we are already moving in that direction. Formalization of the economy. A government should develop and implement policies that facilitate the formalization of the economy, including formal registration of businesses and persons. It has been mentioned earlier in different forums that it would be good to track a citizen from the moment they are born so that we have their NIN, and at the time of their working age, we begin to see how to benefit from them as a country. Even the businesses that are registered, we begin to follow those businesses in their life cycle. And also looking at other areas, for example, the financial inclusion strategy, as we move away from the cash-based economy, because I believe when we move to an electronic way of doing business, especially when it comes to transacting, the Uganda Revenue Authority will see their figures of revenue grow. Because right now with cash, many transactions are done off the system, and it becomes now up to the Uganda Revenue Authority to prove. And yet the other way around, it would be the taxpayer to prove. I thank you in that space. As I conclude, allow me to thank the government of Uganda and the National AML-CFT Task Force for allowing this risk assessment, for guiding it, and for taking the necessary steps in making sure that recommendation 1 of the Financial Action Task Force of Uganda being able to understand their risk and being able to assess it, identify the areas that need mitigation measures have been identified. Also to the management of all participating agencies being able to allocate resource persons within the working group to be able to take time and really put this report together. A lot of work went into the Diamond tool. If you really begin to do your research on the Diamond tool, we really performed very well. I request that we clap for ourselves. Yes. To the working group, we thank you. I request for those members present for the working group to stand up for recognition quickly. Thank you very much. Uganda is grateful. And the World Bank team, both the Uganda country office and the global team, we also want to thank you. On the global team, we had some gentlemen. There was one called Yiman Yu. I believe I mentioned the name, the lady, I mentioned the name right, Yiman Yu. There was Isabel and Yara Escavel. We want to thank them because I believe this broadcast is happening live, and there is a YouTube link which is live, and we shared this link with them, and I hope that they are following these proceedings. Thank you.
Can we give Edward and team another bigger round of applause? Thank you very much, Edward. At least now we know where we're coming from and arriving at this report, which has been launched just a while ago. We know where we are. Now we need to tear it a little bit into the report itself and the way forward. So I'm going to request the following people to come and join me and help me to discuss that by occupying the tables here. I'll need an extra microphone. I think I have only one. Can I have Uganda Revenue Authority? Agnes, could you represent? Madam Agnes Nabwire. Mr. Wandera, this is your report, the ED at FIA. So I need you to come and defend it. The private sector working group, do I have a representative from the private sector working group? Could you also join me? Edward, who's coming from the private sector working group? I need someone. Huh? Okay. Thank you. I want to make sure you're comfortable, so I'm going to move one chair, so that we remain with the three. I'll keep the podium to ask just a few questions. Okay. Can I have a second microphone? I think those mics are turned off. You'll turn it on and switch it off after you've spoken to us. Let me start with the Uganda Revenue Authority. Agnes, I'd like you to once again introduce yourself. I had introduced you before. But number two, you've been part of the development of this report. From where you sit, and I've had a lot of challenges being thrown at the Uganda Revenue Authority. What do you see as the major challenge, especially when it comes to ML and tax fraud?
Thank you. Once again, my name is Agnes Nawire Asohola. I'm the Substantive Assistant Commissioner Tax Investigation, Uganda Revenue Authority, and I'm glad to be part of this discussion. This fight comes a long way. If I can remember, since the introduction of Tax Investigation Department. The challenge that URA faces is the ability to trace, identify, and get hold of the proceeds. We all know that tax evasion is a predicate offense to money laundering. With that in the background, we've not yet been successful in actually bringing those that are involved to book. The challenge of identifying, the challenge of tracing and getting hold of the proceeds. And we believe that as long as we cannot touch the assets that have been generated out of these proceeds, we are still leaving them armed and empowered to continue.
You use a word where you sit, I think, in your circles.
Yes.
Follow the money.
Yes, yes.
So why is that difficult to follow the money?
Yes. And because of that, and based on the 10 global principles guided by the OECD, we've been pursuing the interagency collaboration because URA cannot do it alone. And that's why this conversation around bringing all the agencies, the enforcement agencies, the government, and the other, the MDAs, to help see how can we close the gap, because it can not only be one agency to fight. Hence, the effort of bringing the joint collaboration with all the enforcement arms, because we have different strengths in the space of enforcement. And if all these parties come together, everybody knows that we are looking for the money, but there is a part that FIA has to play, a part URA will play, a part DPP will play, a part police and all these other agencies, a part the bank has to play. And with that collaboration, we should be able to follow the money, pick the proceeds out of that money, and then be able to actually tax, and also bring the individuals behind that to book in the courts of law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go to the private sector working group. So if you could introduce yourself briefly, and then number two, What I hear is that a section of people who work in the private sector want the taxman and institutions like FIA to stay as far away from them as possible. But there's also a section that says, for us, we are compliant. We're paying our taxes. The other guys who are not paying are making life difficult for us. When you look at a report like this, what do you make of it, number one? And how does it help the genuine private sector make its contribution to tax generation, but also how does it help you as players in the private sector to do business in a more business-friendly environment?
Thank you. I'm John Baptist Sentua from Standard Chartered Bank. I work under financial crime compliance. For starters, like Madam Agnes stated, actually you can't fight what you don't know, and when you know it, you can't fight alone. So the partnership, I think, is very, very crucial. It's very important, a key in developing the economy. Now, like I said, from the report, definitely it gives us a notch up higher a bit to learn and to create awareness. Normally, everyone is wondering, is tax evasion or avoidance, is it tax planning, is tax evasion normal business? No. So now, from the assessment and from this report, we know that they are tax crimes. And this is for us to know and to start acting against for the fight against the tax crimes. Now, leveling the ground, I think that is very, very important because away from compliance, we really need to develop. And to do with the economy, you have to level the ground. So if one party is compliant, another is not compliant, I think we are creating a bit of disadvantage to the compliant, and we'll see the differences in maybe the pricing and the products. So it is very that we embrace this report and we put systems and controls in place for us to be able to work with the authorities so that we can develop this economy.
People who bank with you would rather have you keep their financial information quiet. There's concern that they will put the money, they'll keep the money out of the banking institutions if they know you're going to report to FIA, you're going to report to Uganda Revenue Authority once they get in touch with you. How do you create the balance? How do you support as a collaborator? And this.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think this is where we are going to. We need to create awareness to our clients. They need to know what are the obligations, yeah? We all want a healthy economy, yeah? We want a level ground. And also, we know we have obligations, we have the laws, and all the information that is delivered within the confines of the law, all the obligations. So no one wants to embark on a boat that doesn't have safeguards. So be sure that information is only provided within the confines or within the jurisdiction that has been stated. And also we support our clients because we want to grow. We don't want to bank you today and then tomorrow, you do more just because of the tax offenses or crimes. So we want to support them and also they will understand the requirements that we need.
Mr. Idi, I'll ask you a rather general question. I know Edward has explained the process that you went through to generate this report. I want to hear from you as FIA what this journey has been like for you. You started 2017, you had a hit with COVID and the shutdown, and then were able to pick it up to where we are. And number two, you emphasized in your speech here the need for collaboration, the need for recognition. What is missing?
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to confirm what you have said, that to come up with this report, it is a standard report. The methodology used is highly credible, and the variables analyzed are credible, and therefore, once you collect reliable data and you put in the tool, then it gives you reliable information which you can rely on as a country. Then it is also a requirement for FIA to undertake risk assessments to be able to come up with mitigation mechanisms to protect these crimes. Just like my colleague has said, you cannot fight what you don't know. So we are supposed to undertake these assessments to establish the vulnerabilities and then provide mitigation measures to prevent further occurrence of these crimes. Therefore, in fulfillment of that mandate which we do, we work with other stakeholders to come up with the reliable risks which are then addressed. If there are requirements to come up with the legal framework, then you put a legal framework such that whoever is a stakeholder in the chain is able to address those gaps. So at the FIA, this was the objective of doing this, and we are doing other risk assessments with other stakeholders such that we bridge the gaps which exist to enable crime to thrive. Because as you know, criminals are always ahead of law enforcement. They come up with new schemes. Because once you tighten where they have been benefiting from, they definitely try to create new areas, and therefore FIA must be ahead in terms of doing risk assessments to identify those areas where criminals tend to exploit to advance their criminal networks. So in this report, we, like Edward has explained, we have come up with those areas of weakness, and we have provided mitigation measures which both URA and the Ministry of Finance and other stakeholders should look out for. And of course, we know that this is linked to other, we call it organized crime. So one person alone cannot execute this crime. It is a network, a syndicate, and it is cross-border. And this is why it makes it important to have our international cooperation, and that's why UNODC is here with us, because they have that network across all countries. So I think I can say that has been our journey.
Okay.
And I'm proud that we are the first to come up with this risk assessment on the tax crimes.
You're the pilot, of course, and we'll be looking out to see how you proceed from here and who other people pick up. But in the presentation, Edward talked about something, and I saw ODPP was taking notes on it. You said you want non-conviction-based asset forfeiture laws. Could you explain exactly what it is that you're looking out for in this and how you see this working?
Basically, globally, it has been identified that these criminals, they have mechanisms of acquiring assets through criminal illicit financial flows. And as you know, these crimes are undercover. And the current mechanism is that you must prove that these funds are originating from a predicate offense which is committed. However, we see a lot of assets, we see accumulation, and non-conviction based therefore requires that you can prosecute crimes not necessarily from the predicate offense. And if that is followed, then we shall be able to deter a lot of criminal activities. The Financial Action Task Force has also revised the standards, and this is a requirement for countries to have these mechanisms in place to be able to confiscate these proceeds. And now that Josephine is in the house, maybe she can add more on that, because that is her area. I will not be confident enough when the owners of these areas of are in the house. So the forfeiture would mean that, for instance, if this was my building, I should be able to prove how I was able to build this. And we believe if that law is passed...
They say we have one of the most lucrative real estate businesses in, I mean, people compare prices of an apartment in an upscale area in New York or London or Dubai, and the rates for real estate in Kampala, and they say, where exactly is this money coming from? Why is it so expensive to buy a small plot of land in Kololo, Nakasero, even Kiranajel and other places? And they're saying, are you looking carefully in those places? What exactly is going on there? How are you able to follow that money?
Yeah, we have done, when you look at our 2023 National Risk Assessment on money laundering and financing of terrorism, the report clearly highlights that most of the proceeds which are generated in this country are invested in the real estate sector. And basically, the driving factors are that this is not regulated. And if you have a sector which is not regulated, then it is an attractive area for criminals to hide their proceeds, because there's nobody who is monitoring their activities.
Thank you.
And also, you find that in terms of the economy, we are cash-based. And for FIA, we follow mainly transactions within the formal financial sector. So once the cash is applied, then you break the link between the owners and how those properties are financed. So most of these are financed through the cash mode, which becomes very hard to trace. But if we can quickly put the regulatory mechanism for this sector, then we can be able to curb the laundering of proceeds through the real estate sector, which is the number one.
Thank you. Let me come to Agnes briefly. ODPP, I'm coming to you. I think FIR has thrown it to you, but I'm coming to you in a moment. Agnes, the government has set a very ambitious development agenda. The question is, do you think, are you able to match with this in terms of revenue collection? Because if you've set a 10-point agenda, the revenue collection must. Yes. How do you fit in there?
Thank you very much. Yeah, when you look at the 10-fold economic program that the government has launched, saying that by 2040 we should have grown our GDP from 50 to $500 billion. I hope I'm right. The figures may not be. Yeah, of course, that places URA in a very volatile position, that we must be able to see how we support government in driving the government agenda. And as the minister already highlighted, that the foreign support is dwindling and the focus is on domestic revenue mobilization. So looking at this launch of the risk assessment that FIA and URA and the development partners worked on. URA now needs to see how it can enforce certain frameworks that will help in fighting the illicit financial flow so that we can expand the tax base and minimize non-compliance. What we can do in line with today's program is that we need to enforce the joint investigation and strengthen collaboration with FIA, the other MDAs, in the journey of fighting the non-compliance. And as you know, I think the struggle that we've had as URA is mainly two. How do we grow the tax base, and how do we enforce on non-compliance? This comes in the place to help do both. That as long as we're able to trace those resources that are not disclosed, we should be able to bring all those parties in the tax bracket. As long as we are able to bring them to book through the enforcement of huge punitive penalties, then it may be a message to enforce compliance. And another angle that the director already highlighted, the informality in the economy. If we are able to address the issue of eliminating or minimizing cash transactions and probably digitalize it, either we use the forms that can enable us easily trace. Our neighbor here in Kenya, M-Pesa, is in the order of the day now. Even somebody selling tomatoes at the roadside, they use M-Pesa. They no longer allow cash. You can only know that when you're a foreigner. When you're a foreigner, they can't tell. But if you're a fellow citizen, it is M-Pesa, which is easy to be traced. Coming to Uganda, if we enhanced the use of mobile money, that every transaction use Momo, I think it will be able to reduce on the cash transaction, which is very difficult to trace. So URA needs to strengthen this collaboration, as well as every responsible parastatal to do their role to help minimize those gaps that is making it hard for us to expand the tax base and tap into those monies that are that easily elude us. When he talks about the real estate, we had a joint investigation with UNRWA, with FIA, URA. Now, we were looking at construction sector, and in relation to areas that we see that government invests a lot of money when they are supporting such construction projects like road projects and all that. But there's a lot of informalities in there that these criminals take advantage of. Purchase of land, purchase of all these properties in this city, you may not necessarily trace where the money actually came from. So there's a lot of informality that even us as investigators, you find it difficult to prove, especially when you cannot trace the movements of this money through the regulated system and processes. A lot of informality that's making it difficult for us.
Two quick ones for you before I go to the bankers. If I needed to bring money into this country, I only have one place to avoid, the airport, and that's Entebbe. If I was landing at Gulu from South Sudan, which is now receiving a lot of international flights, especially between Juba and Gulu, and before we open the one in Western Uganda, I would easily get in any amount of money that I need. You only require me to declare if I was coming through Entebbe International Airport. What explains that? What plans do you have to make sure that, yes, I know we have very porous borders, but there is no requirement for declaration almost at any other entry point?
Thank you very much. Like you've highlighted, at the airport, there's already a requirement for one to declare. And I think that's the message we are trying to spread across the borders. We've been working closely with immigration at the borders. Some of the borders that have been established, there's the joint, the one-stop border control. We have immigration there. And of course, FIA is, has come out with a FIA and URA. We've come up with a form that requires the passengers, whoever crosses the border, to declare them. So I think the issue is about enforcement, because this same document is at the airport, can be deployed at all border points. But again, like you said, we have a porous border, and that is the reason why we must work together, because we have so many enforcement agencies at those borders. So this exercise cannot only be done by FIA and URA, but the collaboration among the agencies. And if they are not, they are trained and given the tools and how to handle it, there should be room for us to try and begin enforcing that.
You talked about formalization. The last I checked, when there was a lot of debate about IFRIS, they said you haven't enrolled government agencies on IFRIS. Majority of them are not on.
I may not speak.
They say charity begins at home.
Yes,
so in government,
but I must say, for all the government agencies that are involved in government procurement and payments, and you're dealing with URA, you must be on IFRIS. To the best of my knowledge, at least I'm aware that all those that we are dealing with are on IFRIS. If you're not on IFRIS, we have no business with you. And still, the same message, enforcement, by not only URA or a few agencies, but by everybody. And maybe I use this opportunity to appeal to the citizens that the introduction of IFRIS is actually helping to level the playground for everybody. And it will be asked the citizens to begin pursuing. If I came to your shop, you're issuing me a receipt that is not physicalized, it should be my responsibility to ask, why are you not on IFRIS? You go to a hotel, they're giving you a receipt, not physicalized. It should be my role as a citizen to demand for you to be on IFRIS. So I think it is it's a responsibility for all of us as Ugandans to see that this system works so that it levels the playground for those who are genuinely paying taxes, hence improve on our tax collection. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to open this up to the audience. I can see time is not my best ally. But from the private sector, I want to come back briefly to you before you, and to the executive director there. Two quick questions for me from the private sector. The ED says the starting point is to understand the threats, vulnerabilities, and devise appropriate mitigation measures that are recommended. Would you have any recommendations for them, for the government, since you're from the private sector? Any specific recommendations?
Interesting. I think from the report you saw where we have weaknesses, and the recommendations given. Part of it was our input, but I would say a bit of enforcement, and I think that's where we need to point enforcement for all, and that will enhance the compliance, and then we shall have a level ground, and that will also widen our tax base.
Thank you. Let me, ED asks for help from ODPP, so let me start from ODPP. The ED threw the curveball towards you. Let me first hear from you. We're talking about non-conviction based asset forfeiture.
Okay. I don't know what the ED wanted me to talk about, but maybe to help us understand. The non-conviction-based forfeiture system is that system that enables government recover crime proceeds in absence of a criminal trial and in absence of a conviction. In other words, you don't have to go through a trial process. You're convicted and then ordered to either refund or to forfeit your property to the state. And what the ED said is also correct. This civil forfeiture or non-conviction-based, rather, non-conviction-based forfeiture system is no longer an option for countries. It is a requirement now under the FATF recommendations for all countries to have this type of system. And he did indicate that, for instance, the way it works is if I see a building on Kampala Road and I suspect, I'm just giving an example, that it is likely to be a proceed of crime, but this must not be on suspicion. As an investigator or a prosecutor, I must have real reasons. Then I institute proceedings against that building. It will not be Uganda versus person so and so, but it will be Uganda versus property comprised in block 2, plot this on Kampala Road. So whoever thinks or believes that they own that property and they have a legitimate claim to it, they acquired it properly, it becomes your burden to defend the manner in which you acquired it. And it no longer goes to the burden they've been trying to explain of beyond reasonable doubt. No, it now turns to you to explain. So that I'm aware there is a bill, the Proceeds of Crime Bill, where Uganda intends to introduce this. The DPP is participates in it. But many people seem to be scared of this and to have negative thoughts about it. But as the office of the DPP, because they seem to...
That you're turning presumption of innocence on its head.
Yes.
You're judging the property guilty before it is subjected to a proper process.
Yes, that's one of the challenges that people come up with. They also come up with a right to own property. But our position, and it is a firm position from the office of the DPP, is that the Constitution only protects property that is legitimately acquired. It does not protect property that is stolen. I can't pick your phone, you come to pick it from me and I say my right to property. No, that's not how it works. And when it comes to presumption of innocence and burdens moving, shifting to the other party, as a prosecutor, this will not be the first time in our laws that that burden shifts. And in any case, if you know you acquired it properly, then produce your incomes, your sources of income, you are able to look at it, and also be sure that it's among those that are legitimate. You don't have any of those that fall within those that are where you have not paid your taxes, all those that fall under their docket. We are sure there is no drug trafficking, human trafficking in it. Why shouldn't you own your property? Because we are also aware that becoming rich in this country is not illegal. So, but if it is tainted, you cease to have a legitimate right of ownership to such property. That's how it works.
Thank you. I'll open this up to the audience. Any contributions, any comments? And then for a few minutes, then we'll close out this a bit. Don't force me into a difficult position to ask people to contribute. I need volunteers fast. Thank you very much. There's a microphone here. Someone can help me to move that microphone. Thank you. Just introduce yourself and your question or comment.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Dokoria from Stanbic Bank. I think mine is just to supplement what the question you asked, John Bosco, how can the private sector support government? I think one of the things that we've been talking about for a very long time is strengthening the public-private sector collaboration. I think that will go a long way if we really worked very closely together. So earlier when they mentioned there's even a training tomorrow, I was asking my colleague here, why is the private sector not part of that training? I think we could also, it's something we've also talked about quite a bit, is benefit from trends, typologies, if we are discussing. If, for example, URA is giving us a view of what they're seeing from their side, then on the banking side, we're also able to, calibrate our rules to pick up this activity, so that we are able to report some of these transactions. Because there are things we see, and, it kind of points to maybe tax evasion and things like that, but sometimes you're not sure, but you report. But if we strengthen that partnership, I think it will go a long way in us all together. It's become syndicated, because they were talking about strengthening, and we talked about, the way criminals have syndicated crime. I think for us, I don't know what would call it, but syndicated.
I think the word they are using is collaborative.
Collaboration.
Collaboration.
Yeah, I think that would help.
Thank you very much, Decoria. Do I have another comment or question? Yes, there is another. Your neighbor there? Yes, your neighbor, your immediate neighbor. Sir, your name and
Thank you. My name is Muganga Nicholas from URA.
Sure.
This is also a supplement to what has been discussed. First and foremost on money coming into the country. Many people have asked the same question, and they reach out asking, if I came with money, does URA seize that money? And because of the mystery that has been surrounding money movements, most people are given wrong information. And the good thing is that URA and FIA collaboration has gone a bit higher to demystify all this. Well, I would request perhaps the media or our friends from the media to also promote the same, that it's not a crime to come in with money. As long as you declare that money, and no one is going to touch that money like the people have it out there. Because many times you at the airport and someone comes and whispers and says, someone told me that if I make a declaration, URA is going to charge a tax. URA does not charge a tax on any money coming in or going out, as long as there's a declaration. And as URA, making a declaration does not mean that URA stops at that. No. We actually profile. If Nicholas is taking out 100,000, what does he do? What is it for? You will make a declaration and move on. In the background, we'll make our own profiles. And through FIA, because the declaration also goes to FIA, FIA does the background checks as well. Number two, the issue of parallel investigation. You talked about earlier of how is URA managing when it comes to money laundering prosecutions and following the money. We all know that following the money is not as easy as it sounds, because to prove money laundering, there has to be a crime committed somewhere. Now, if money laundering is multifaceted, a crime will happen in Sudan and money spent in Uganda. How easy is it for me as an investigator to actually prove that there was a crime committed in Sudan, for me to be able to prosecute that individual in question? Because the financial institution is one of the areas where this happens, because money cannot leave Sudan by foot, but rather electronically. So now, URA in its capacity, building and with collaboration with other agencies, we are also looking at bringing on board these other agencies in the different jurisdictions, not only through exchange of information, but also through our collaboration and participation in the different forums. We have the anti-money laundering task force, which engages in periodic engagements under the Eastern and Southern African Anti-Money Laundering Group. And most of the members of these jurisdictions, we have personal interactions. So we are under FATF recommendations. They also encourage off-the-record collaborations for purposes of expediting investigations. So if I pick a phone and call a colleague in South Sudan and ask about a certain amount of money that came in, they'll be able to help. Though legally, you'll have to write. But at least it helps you move a step higher in conducting your investigations.
Did someone say that especially tax crime and money laundering is very dynamic and wants to move ahead? If you informalize, they also informalize, and everybody disappears. Let me have a comment from the next gentleman here. Yes, sir. Here on this table, then I'll come to you. Anyone on this side? Okay.
Thank you, MC. I am called Moses Ogwapus, Commissioner of Financial Services, Minister of Finance. I like to comment on three things. One relates to the fact that we have a liberal capital account or liberal economy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we are, as government, we are criticized that we are too liberal, not just on transfers, inflows and outflows of capital, but also other aspects of economic management. I like to say that government would like to continue, intends to continue with our liberal stance, because there is overwhelming evidence that it is bearing great fruits for the country. Having a liberal economy is not tantamount to having no regulation and enforcement, and I think our AML policy and the law and other laws, including what Josephine submitted, including also what we are doing here today, point to the fact that you can have a balance of a liberal economy, a liberal capital account, with regulation and enforcement of laws. I don't think any one of us here will be happy to be restricted by government in terms of how much money you bring in and how you bring it in, as long as there is no crime involved. That is the stance of government, and I think it has worked positively for us. Secondly, on the issue of limiting the use of cash, I mean, we appreciate that it creates an opportunity for crime because it limits the audit trail and audit trail. However, you all appreciate that the approach we are taking as government is to incentivize the use of digital channels through our new National Payment Systems Act and other incentives that we have provided to ensure that digital channels of use in financial intermediation are available in the country. And we intend to continue doing so. The third one, where I wanted to comment on, is on the issue of informality. Again, we appreciate as government that this is a challenge. In fact, 2 days ago in Munyonyo, we had a paper launched, a paper undertaken by EPRC on behalf of the ministry to appreciate further how best we can deal with the issue of informality. So it is something that government and the ministry is pursuing to ensure that we support persons meaning individuals and companies, which are operating in an informal way to graduate into formal systems of doing business, but also for purposes of URA, being compliant for tax purposes. How have we done this? We are We have a project in the ministry which is working on licensing reforms to ensure that we have less burden for compliance in terms of the licensing, permits, and authorizations. We know that in some instances, some of these have been avenues which make it difficult for people to formalize. We also have a one-stop center now where URSB, UIA are operating in one hub and other agencies to make it easy for businesses to formalize. And also, in the 10-fold growth strategy that we are pursuing under the NDP4, informality has been highlighted as a major constraint to taking us to the next level in terms of economic growth. And part of the reason we've identified is the effectiveness of the different government agencies which are required to enforce either local governments having to which issue permits and different authorizations, not being able to do what they are supposed to do. Because no business in this country can operate, I am sure, in any point in this country without a local government giving you some leeway to do it there. So if local governments were doing their job, then the issue of informality doesn't become a serious one. If UNBS is doing its job to ensure that goods which are on our markets, in our supermarkets, are duly certified, then you deal with that issue. Of course, if URA is also doing its part to make sure that companies and persons duly comply to their tax obligations, they are registered, so you can see that the effectiveness of government is a big factor in dealing with the issue of informality. And the good news is that this has been identified as a weakness and all necessary strategies are in place to ensure that we deal with this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ogwapos. I have a hand here and a hand there, and then we'll close this. You've switched it off.
Okay, so my name is Ronald Msoke. I'm a journalist based at the Independent magazine. My question goes to Ms. Agnes. Maybe you'll be assisted by Mr. Wandera to also answer the same question. You've been talking about collaboration amongst government agencies, and I'm here wondering how far you've benefited from the Inspectorate of Government's statutory requirement for civil servants in Uganda to regularly declare what they own, their assets and the like. Because I struggle all the time to, for instance, if you want to sort of to ask you, the IG, whether this person is able, or you are able to get something from maybe a particular person you're concerned about, and they say, no, you can't access this information. I don't know, the logic behind it, I don't understand it, because ideally, from my limited knowledge, I assume that once these declarations are made by these civil servants, this information should be available to the public, because the public is the one which lives amongst this, with these people. They could declare, they could declare properties which actually below what they actually have. And we all know that, for instance, politicians in this country at the moment, they are really, everybody knows the story of I think they are highly exposed persons, but also they're making some good money. So my quick question is, do you benefit from information from the IG declarations from civil servants, and how useful has been this information to you?
Thank you very much. From the Independent. I have a question from this side, a comment? Just to, and we will close this out. The microphone is coming to you in a moment. Let me have somebody help. You have?
Thank you very much, panelists. My name is John Odiek from the New Vision. I've been thinking, how much could we be losing in tax crimes? There seems to be nothing which shows the amount of, or some estimate. Because if we say that our tax to the GDP is about 13%, we could be at 18. Does it mean that because of tax crimes, that's the gap that is created? But I just want to understand, is there any estimate that really shows that we are really losing? Then secondly, and briefly, the issue of informality. I heard someone from finance talking about it. I think we just need to start redefining our approach to what we call formality, because we could use many approaches using people's national ID, licenses paid, and all these phone numbers to bring people to the formal sector. But if we are going to use the Western approach of formality, then we are going to say that many Ugandans are in the informal sector. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another person, another question coming there? Yes? Can we pick that, then we come to the director? The director is to speak to us.
Thank you. My name is Pascal Mhanji. I'm from CS Bank. And mine is a recommendation. From the reports, we saw that the tax crimes that have been identified are about 230,000, and the criminal investigations are only 979. That is 0.42%. So my question is, why the gap? Why do we have 230,000 tax crimes that have been identified, but only 979 criminal investigations? I think that could be the gap. We have a lot of cases and we are not investigating them.
Thank you.
Lastly, there is the issue of trust. And throughout the discussions, we have not discussed the issue of corruption, misuse of resources. And when you talk to the people, for us who go to communities, every time you talk about taxes, people say that we pay taxes, but we don't see the impact. Could that be the reason? What is being done to ensure that whatever we are collecting is being put to good use, so that people have trust in the government? The reason people are not maybe registering their business, the reason people are not declaring what they are making is because they feel what is being collected is not being put to good use. According to the IGG report, cost of corruption report, we lose about 9.1 trillion to corruption per year. In procurement processes alone, we lose 614 billion per annum just in procurement. Maybe the reason we are not seeing a lot of compliance, a lot of evasion, people think that whatever we are collecting is going to the hands of a few and not benefiting the general public.
Thank you. Can I have Commissioner? Yes, Director.
Okay, thank you. My name is Osret Job Cedric from Financial Intelligence Authority. Mine is just in way of an encouragement to FIA, to URA. I know many times because of the process involved in prosecution, when you pursue money laundering, there is the anticipation of the lengthy process, and then of course the pressure for collection of revenue. But from what I've seen is that prosecuting for money laundering has in a way created deterrence. So the few that will be able to prosecute for money laundering will certainly grow the number of taxpayers who will be getting into voluntary compliance. So it's just a way of encouragement, and then also maybe the element of Form C and D. I think it's a good thing for us to be able to champion that at the border posts, because we spoke to the issue of informality. And I think among the mechanisms we can adopt to ensure formalization is picking that information.
You closed some of us out. What is Form
Oh,
CFD?
those are the forms we use to declare cash going in and coming in. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. As we come back to the panel, I hope you'll summarize your responses. But I just wanted to build on the gentleman from the independence question. The Leadership Code Act, what is its place if there is no public information about these declarations? As a journalist, I think I did the last story of declaration of assets. And then the law was changed and they were closed off with I think, Jotham Tumwesige when he was IG. The last story. No one has done that ever since. I think the current Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, when he still belonged to the other side, he said, let buildings declare their owners. Every building would declare its owner and would be able to know. And I think the gap is that the law has been manipulated in a way and closed that off so the public cannot help government to identify who is hiding what, where. Please, let's have responses from here, briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll respond to that, but not as a competent authority from IGG, but probably as URA, we've only accessed...
Your collaborators?
Yes, we've just accessed it based on collaboration, case by case, where we need information because of either a case we are handling. But the information is not just out there for us to access, just like you are not able to access. But I think IGG is in the best place to explain that. But I must say that with the rest of the agencies, our access to information has been enhanced with the MOUs we have with them, the exchanges of information that is amongst us as government agencies. We access it, but based on, it's a case by case. This is my last comment, and I make my last remark. Yes, as URA, we are really alive to the tenfold growth, economic growth program, and alive to the goals set out in the NDP 4. And definitely it's a challenge to us as URA. So we are focusing on reviewing our tax compliance and enforcement strategies. How can we enhance voluntary compliance by adopting technology? We are trying to enhance that area, data analysis, and ability to identify tax evasion efficiently. 2, we are focusing on tax education and awareness. We notice that the public is not well informed, and because of that, URA has even enhanced the structure that we have created a division that is managing tax education, and equally in-house, we are strengthening, skilling our staff. We have a whole department of tax academy so that the staff are well equipped and trained in the face of us actually facing to be able to fight the non-compliance. And of course, we cannot again emphasize more than we've already demonstrated, collaboration. The collaboration is the only way that will help support us in collecting revenue. Come September 2025, we are launching out the automatic exchange of information. So URA will be able to exchange information or receive information, financial information from over 140 plus jurisdictions across the globe. We believe that will enable us access some of the information regarding the property, the monies that Ugandans have been holding in all these other places. So I believe all these efforts put together will enable us be able to collect more revenue to support our economy and hence attain our vision of liberating Uganda from economic dependence. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman, was your question answered? Agnes? Okay. Maybe you also help us.
I will supplement what my colleague has just said. But first and foremost, I want to appreciate the comments and the supplements which have been made, all aimed at strengthening our efforts to fight crime. In terms of the specific question, it is true there are a number of legislations, including the Privacy to Information Act, and that information is basically available on a request at FIA when we are following up on certain financial flows. We can coordinate with the Inspectorate of Government and they provide the information. At the FIA, we also hold sensitive information, and the law clearly specifies who is supposed to access our information. Because most of our information is intelligence in nature, and on a number of occasions, some of the media houses have been trying to reach out to me to get some information which could be trending in social media and other places. But I have informed them that the law provides who I share the intelligence information with, and sometimes I am not able to provide the information because there are legal frameworks which guide how to share this information. I'm sure that I think the reason why that information has not been made public, that's how the law is designed. But of course,
there's an
I'm
access to
sure
information
that,
law as well.
yes, I'm sure that if there is a concern, legislation can be amended, and maybe I would say that there could be a demand from either the private sector to cause the amendment of this law to ensure that this information is public. Our neighbors have been saying from the neighboring country, Kenya, they have legislation which requires certain things to be in the public domain. But I think until we reach there, it may still cause that limitation for the public to get this information because of other protocols. And I'm sure if you requested formally and you go through the right processes, I'm sure you would be able to get that information through the appropriate channels. Maybe my last word is basically to reiterate that fighting crime is not easy and is not for one entity. Therefore, the collaboration efforts from the different government departments is important. And for Uganda's perspective, under the AML safety framework, we have a task force, the anti-money laundering task force at the national level, which is chaired by the Minister of Finance and Moses and his team. Then the secretariat is at the FIA. So we come together with the other stakeholders to identify the challenges across government and try to come up with the mitigation measures. We are currently developing a strategy, the national strategy to fight financial crimes. And I'm sure we are going to reach out to some of you to provide an input because it is a consultative from all stakeholders. And I'm sure going forward, if we continue with this collaboration and working together, we shall be able to defeat crime. So I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. John Bosco, last comment.
Thank you. I can't overemphasize collaboration. I think that has been put forward so well. We need feedback. The private-public partnership is very key in this. And a call to all of us, let's embrace the risk assessments, this and others, so that we can build a transparent financial system. We disrupt the risk flow of these funds for a healthy economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause to the panel? Can we give another round of applause to you in the audience for your participation? Thank you. I think we're done for the morning. Thank you. Sorry, I just been reminded there was a question from a gentleman from CS Bag on the numbers that wasn't answered. Edward, could you clarify briefly? Could you clarify use about a minute?
Yes, thank you, our panel, our dear panel, for being able to take on those tough questions. The question which came from CS Bag was in relation to the 230,379 cases that were detected from different sources. This is in page 17 of the main report, which was measuring the magnitude of the tax crime threat. And you are wondering why, out of this high number, there is a low criminal investigation and prosecution rate. And the answer to this really is in the types of reports that are submitted, the whistleblower reports, the cases detected out of audit reports, cases detected out of other interactions with entities that are due to file taxes. And some of these cases that are detected are quickly dropped, many of which are dropped because merit is not found as to a tax crime to have been committed. Only those cases where they believe there are reasonable grounds to begin an investigation, those are the ones which then proceed for criminal tax investigations. And that's why the numbers gradually drop in the section for investigations. So it is important to note that not everything, after a report has been made, the case has been detected, it goes through a certain procedure of verifying the information, the credibility of the informant, the source, and the information in itself. So let us not downplay the efforts that have been put in place by the Uganda Revenue Authority. It's important to take note that out of these many cases that are detected, they are actually verified, and only those with merit proceed to investigations and prosecutions. Actually, the real rate that you should be more concerned on as civil society would be the one, the rate for prosecutions vis-a-vis investigations, and then convictions vis-a-vis prosecutions. And there you will see that the figures are quite impressive. Looking at the number of investigations and you compare them to the number of convictions, you will see that the conviction rate is actually very high. I thank you and I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Edward, we thought that was important that it's clarified before we disperse. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for making time to be at this launch. And thank you very much to FIA and URA for putting everything together. Have a good afternoon.